What's going on, everyone? So, with Scream 7 vastly approaching, Gale and Sidney, they have a history, right? Gale's always been trying to get the scoop. Gale has always been trying to, interview Sidney Prescott, get the details. She's set him up or set her up on several occasions. She's gotten, a swift, chip to the jaw on a couple occasions. You got that on film? Yes, I got that on film, right? Like those kind of interactions and stuff. I love it, right? And just the history and trajectory of these two. They've always had that sort of love-hate relationship. It started more kind of hate, and you've seen that relationship really grow, develop, and blossom. And they, are two characters that are connected by this, horrific series of events that they regularly find themselves involved in. Gale more so kind of injecting herself, where Sidney kind of, ends up finding herself in it rather than going and chasing after it. But Gale and Sidney, they are supposed to have quite the roller coaster once again, this upcoming Scream movie. Rumors and talks about them potentially having a little kind of, a little disagreement or some type of argument or some kind of disconnect. We don't really know how severe or if it's anything that's, like detrimental to either character or anything. Like, we don't know the severity of the type of, spat that they have. But supposedly they're supposed to have that and then kind of reconcile and whatnot. Well, there's another rumor going around. Like I say, it's always a rumor until it's proven true. Always take this stuff with a grain of salt. But there is a rumor going around that Gale is finally going to get that interview from Sidney Prescott. That Sidney is finally going to give Gale the interview she's always looking for. So, a couple things about this, right? Let's assume this is true, right? Again, take it with a grain of salt. We don't know. But this does kind of beg several questions, right? One is, when does this interview happen, right? Because if this happens like at the end of the movie, then we know Gale and Sidney survive, right? Does this happen in the middle of the movie, right? Okay, well, if so, why is Gale interviewing Sidney in the middle of a Ghostface attack? Unless there's something where they think it's over, right? Like maybe we get to the midway point. There's talks about an early Ghostface reveal type thing. Like maybe you get something like that. They think all is done. Sidney goes, you know what? I'll give you that interview type thing. Like, let's do this together type thing. I mean, look at it like this. Dewey talked, and what was it? Scream 4, proposed the idea of Gale and Sidney working together, right? What if that's what it is? What if, they both, in kind of, remembrance of Dewey, kind of work on a project together? Gale gets her interview and then they do a book or something like that together, and they kind of put bygones be bygones. That could be an interesting way to kind of conclude their arc and finish their story, because I mean, again, they've had quite the trajectory from, their introductions, right? And Gale kind of being the one that vouched for Cotton, and, again, Sidney finds out later on that it really wasn't Cotton, and then we get Scream 2 where it's like, is it Cotton? Is it not Cotton? Like, is he out for revenge type thing? Like, turns out, no, he was always, a good guy, right? Like, there's just, you have this history of like Gale, being the reporter that she is, and, usually her target is Sidney Prescott because she's built this brand and this career off of the back of Ghostface, right? So, they've always had this kind of interesting dynamic that I really want, and I've talked about, I'd love to see them kind of continue to explore that arc. Talks about Gale living with Sidney. Okay, that's great. Like, if they're staying with Sidney, momentarily, right? Like, good. Let's get some interactions. Let's get some conversations, right? Like Scream 5, we got the Gale and Sidney kind of dynamic, but I felt like it was so rushed. It was like, we didn't, pace yourself with them, right? Like, these are, the last two of the legacy characters, right? But I'm curious, and I lean towards like, when does this take place? Is it more towards the beginning, right? Because Chad and Mindy are supposed to be, helping out. Is that why Gale goes to Sidney? Maybe Sidney's ready to kind of do an interview and, have that talk, right? And, who better to give it to than Gale? Maybe Sidney does want to kind of Maybe something happens and she's like, all right, I'm ready. Could that be the thing that sparks the Ghostface attack? Right? Maybe Gale does the interview and then that sparks the Ghostface attack, right? There's so many possibilities. There's so many potentials on kind of the path that they could go with this, depending on where and when this interview takes place. Is it a setup? Is it a trap? Right? Like, like there's talks about trapping Ghostface. Like, could that be that? Right? Could this be, Gale and Sidney kind of doing something where they think their guard is down, but they're really prepared for Ghostface, right? There's so many like possibilities and approaches that they can go with this, right? At the end of the day, I just hope that it's, executed in a proper manner. You tell a good story with Gale and Sidney. I think it would be awesome to finally see her get that, finally get that interview, finally get that talk. It just, again, at the end of the day, it's just, when is it? Where is it? Why is it? Right? There's a lot of things that we still need to unfold, and we don't have that information detail. So it's just, again, it's all kind of just speculation at this point. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. But, it'd be great to kind of see, like, I do think that there's, inherent tie-in, like I mentioned, to Scream 4, where Dewey said, like, hey, you two should consider doing a book together. And they kind of were like, kind of that thing, write it together. Well, maybe this is that moment. Right? Maybe this is like, hey, let's do something in remembrance of Dewey. Right? Gale was supposed to do a book of Dewey. She was supposed to write something on Dewey Riley. And as far as we know, she hasn't done that yet. Maybe this is that approach, right? Maybe it's it's, hey, let's do our history. You, me, Dewey, right? So there's like maybe a section in the book for Sidney, a section in the book for Gale, a section in the book for Dewey. And maybe, Sidney writes Gale's side and Gale writes Sidney's side, and then they both write Dewey's side, from their perspectives and stuff, right? So I don't know, just kind of an idea. But as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you think that this is what it is? Do you think, like, you have like a specific kind of thought on what this could be for? Could it be, a trap? Could it be, early in the film, right? Like I said, maybe that's the thing that leads Ghostface to Sidney and Gale, right? Like maybe they announce a joint adventure together, and, and then Ghostface is like, haha, if I follow Gale, Gale will lead me to Sidney. And maybe that's something that we end up see happening, Ghostface trying to track down Sidney. And maybe that's the thing that opens the door. Maybe that's the thing that even starts the spat. Right? Maybe Sidney looks at it as like, man, Gale, like, you talked me into this whole thing, and now look, now my whole family is exposed. Right? Like that could cause the rift. That could cause the issue with it. So again, there's so many ways that they could go about this. So please let me know some of your ideas. I got some of my own. I probably will make a couple videos diving into different ideas. I made notes when I read that, this news, or, rumor, I should say, not news. But again, as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Either way, that being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Now subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.